Awesome. Well, welcome everyone. We are really glad that you're here. Tonight we're going to talk about something that is both deeply personal as well as incredibly common. And that's the grief that we might be carrying without even realizing it and how it's affecting us. I think most people would think, hey, if I were really grieving, I would know it. But what if grief's been showing up in ways that you have been calling something else? Because grief does not always announce itself with tears. It can be in exhaustion or numbness. It can be overreacting to something small because it touched something deep. And so people often believe that grief only shows up after someone passes away or gets divorced. And yes, death and divorce are some of the most painful losses that we experience. But the truth is, grief can follow any loss, change, disappointment, unmet hope that mattered to your heart. And it accompanies almost every transition that we experience, both positive and negative. So tonight is really about learning to recognize the signs of grief that your heart may be giving you. And so this webinar is part teaching, part reflection. And so I strongly encourage you to take notes, but most of all, I would just encourage you to be willing to be honest with yourself. So here's a few things that we want to just highlight to really help you get the most out of our time together. First, we would love to know where you're tuning in from. So if you can, share with us in the chat where you're zooming from, and welcome from there. This webinar is going to be about 60 minutes in length. The last 30 minutes is going to be set aside for questions. And we love questions. I mean, love them. Also, we would love to see you and connect. So if it's at all possible, please have your camera on. But if not, we totally understand. Lastly, feel free to interact with us in the chat. If you have any questions, any at all, please put those in the chat and we will address them in our Q&A at the end.
Yes. And before we go into any of the content, we really wanted to share why this conversation matters so much to us. Because we are not here simply because we've studied this work or because we coach people through it, because we have lived the effects of unresolved grief in very real ways in our own lives, in our marriage, in our communication, and in the ways that we learn to protect ourselves. And both Dan and I know what it's like to carry pain that we don't fully know how to process. So when grief goes unresolved, it impacts every area of our lives.
Yeah.
And so hopefully you got to download the Hidden Grief Checklist. And as we go through these 7 signs tonight, we want to invite you to use that checklist. At the end of it, there's going to be some parts that you can kind of check off what we talk about. And remember, this is not a test, right? There's no score. There's
Yeah.
no gold stars. This is no I'm fine trophy or anything like that. This is just a tool to help you notice what your heart might be trying to say.
Mhm.
So you might check things under emotions, body, relationships, and even daily life. And at the end, there will be one question. What loss, change, disappointment, or relationship may still need completion? And by the end of the webinar, you'll understand exactly what that means.
Yeah.
So before we talk about the signs, the 7 signs, we wanted to redefine grief from what you might have been taught. Grief is the normal and natural emotional response to loss of any kind. And this distinction matters because many people are actually grieving things and calling it something else. We will say things to ourselves like, well, no one died. I should be fine. Or something like, it happened a long time ago. Or maybe even thinking other people have had it so much worse. But our hearts do not heal through comparison. It only heals through honesty, safety, and emotional completion. So we want to really emphasize that loss is not only about death. It can be the loss of a relationship or a dream, even the loss of a role in someone's life. a season of life, a home, a community. It could be the loss of a sense of safety or a version of yourself, or even the life you thought you were going to have. Sometimes we could feel like we thought we'd be somewhere else by now, right? And then sometimes we grieve. We grieve not only about what happened, but maybe about what never happened, like an apology that never came or protection that we did not receive. Maybe it was love that was not expressed, or maybe a childhood we did not get to have. Maybe we're in a marriage that we had hoped would be different, or maybe we had a parent that was physically present but emotionally absent. These are all different signs.
Yeah. And I think one of the reasons that we miss the signs of grief is because most of us were never actually taught how to grieve, right? We were taught how to survive, right? Maybe how to be strong, how to keep going, how to stay busy, how to explain our way our feelings instead of actually listening to them. So in the grief recovery method, we actually talk about six major myths that most of us learned about grief. And those myths are one of the reasons that so many people are carrying around unresolved pain and they don't even realize it. You've probably already heard one of the most common myths: time heals all wounds, or another version of that is just give it time. Well, that sounds comforting on the surface, but it's not actually true. Time passes, life moves on, responsibilities continue, but time itself does not heal our grief. If time alone actually healed grief, then no one would still be hurting over something that happened 5, 10, 20, or even 40 years ago. But many people are hurting. And this is not because they're weak. It's not because they're doing something wrong. It's simply because grief does not, it doesn't heal just because the calendar keeps moving. And so we learned very early on that these myths um, were kind of something that we absorbed by watching how emotions were handled in our homes. Think about what was modeled for you growing up. Was sadness welcomed? Were tears comforted? Were big feelings and emotions allowed? Or maybe did you learn pretty quickly that emotions were inconvenient, embarrassing, too much, or even unsafe? Some of us were even told things like, stop crying, or don't be so dramatic, or if you're going to cry, I'll give you something to cry about. Others may not have been told anything directly. They just watched adults around them shut down, push through, keep busy, or pretend that nothing hurt. Either way, we learned that grief was something that we hid or minimized or intellectualized or managed quietly on our own. But again, these messages do not heal grief, they just
Yeah.
bury it. And when grief gets buried, it doesn't disappear. It comes out sideways in our bodies, our relationships, our reactions, our coping behaviors, and even in the sense that we're functioning, but we're not fully free. And that's why learning to recognize the signs is so important, because very often what we call anxiety, exhaustion, numbness, irritability, or being stuck may actually be unresolved grief asking for our attention.
Yes. So when we look at these seven signs, we're not looking for what's wrong with you. We are simply looking for what may be unresolved. So the first sign is emotional numbness or disconnection. A lot of people, like we said earlier, assume grief is always sadness, but sometimes grief feels like nothing. You are getting things done. You are showing up. You are taking care of responsibilities. And from the outside, you might look fine, but inside, you feel disconnected. It's like life is happening all around you, but you're not fully in it. Numbness is not a sign that you do not care. It's likely a sign that your heart is carrying more than it knows how to process.
Yeah.
So we want to take each one and look at what this can look like. So feeling emotionally flat, going through the motions, not feeling joy the way you used to, feeling detached from yourself or others, saying I'm fine because you're not crying, having a hard time being present. That's all the things that this can look like, right? So we want to ask a question. Where in my life am I functioning but not fully feeling? So we want you to take a minute. Each one of these seven, we're going to ask you a question. And you can take the time. If you want to jot something in the chat, you're more than welcome. If you just want to think about it, if there's something that you want to ask, we can definitely come back to it at the end. So
Yeah.
feel free, whatever you want to do. So this first one is, where in my life, is there a place in my life I'm functioning but not truly feeling?
Yeah. 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 Just think about that for a second as we move on. So the second sign is reactivity. So you may find yourself reacting strongly to something that maybe seems small on the surface. It's something like a comment, a tone of voice, a date on the calendar, a song in the grocery store, a smell, a memory, a place, a person. And then you wonder, why did that hit me so hard? And the reason is because unresolved grief can be experienced in two ways: as a response to the present moment and as a response to everything that that moment represents. So your reaction may very well be pointing to something emotionally unfinished beneath the surface. So what does this look like? What can this look like in your life? Ways that you can look at and possibly identify: irritability or anxiety spikes, crying unexpectedly, experiencing anger that feels much bigger than the moment. You feel triggered by dates or memories or smells, songs, places, or people. You overreact, and then afterwards you feel confused or ashamed in the aftermath of that. These are all signs of what it can look like. And so the reflection question that we want to pose to you, and again, you can take a picture of it, or if you just want to jot it down, or if you want to kind of save it for later to delve into in the Q&A. But what situations feel bigger than they should, and what might they be triggering in me? Just take a minute to think about that. Just maybe let it mull over in your mind.
Yes, these are really good. As you're saying it, sometimes I'm thinking about there might be certain topics that when someone brings it up, you have a real big reaction or a defensive reaction,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
Good one, good one. Okay, number three is that you keep replaying the past. So this might sound like, I should have said, or I wish they knew, or why did this happen? Things that you keep questioning right over and over in your
Yeah.
mind. Why didn't I speak up? Why didn't I say this? We're so clear about what we would want to say, right?
Yeah.
Why couldn't they love me differently? What if I had done something else? And in grief recovery, we talk a lot about undelivered emotional communications. And these are the things we wish we could say, wish that we had said, or wish had been heard. Was there
Mm,
something you wish a parent said to you, told you, that kind of thing? And our mind will keep replaying them because our heart is looking for completion.
mm,
I think that's so powerful. We ruminate on things because we're looking for completion. So it's your heart is not trying to torture you. It's trying to resolve something unfinished.
mm,
It's trying to complete what was left unsaid, unheard, or unresolved. And this can look like replaying conversations, thinking about what I should have said, wishing they understood, imagining a different outcome, maybe rehearsing old pain or feeling stuck in regret, guilt, anger, or longing, needing to say something that you never got to say.
mm. Yeah.
These are all powerful. So, our question for this one is what conversation or moment or relationship or loss do I keep replaying? Is there something that you're replaying? Maybe that comes in your mind when your head hits the pillow. You find it
Mm,
hard to sleep, whatever that
yeah,
is.
yeah. So the fourth sign is exhaustion. Let's be honest, unresolved grief is heavy. It takes energy to carry whatever's been left emotionally incomplete. Um, it also takes energy to avoid it. It takes energy to stay strong and to continue functioning when part of our hearts are still holding on to the pain. And so this shows up as maybe feelings of fatigue, or maybe a lack of motivation, brain fog, or just that feeling of why does everything feel so hard, right?
Mm.
And sometimes, we don't need more discipline. We just need emotional completion, because the soul can only carry so much before it just starts asking or even begging for relief. So, in looking at how this appears, like I said, you can see fatigue or brain fog, a lack of motivation. You might find it difficult concentrating on things for very long. It might feel like everything, even little things, just take a lot more effort. You may have a very difficult time getting to sleep. You just might, just in general, you carry an emotional heaviness that maybe you don't necessarily, where you're not necessarily naming it, but you just sort of feel it. It just is like a weight on your back that you carry around. You kind of tend to feel older than you actually are. These are all things that it can look like. And so the question to really lean into in this is, what feels emotionally heavier than it used to? And what might I still be carrying? So just kind of an important question to sit with and think about for that sign.
Yeah, this is the kind of thing that if something pops into your mind, write it down because that
Yeah.
sometimes without thinking, something might come to your mind. Okay, number five, the fifth sign is avoidance. So, avoidance can be very subtle.
Yeah.
You may avoid a box of photos, a song, a restaurant, a person, may avoid the holidays, a specific holiday, maybe a conversation talking about some topic. You might avoid a room in the house, a
Mhm.
topic in your marriage. You just rather not even touch that, just would rather avoid the fight. Maybe it's avoiding a memory from childhood. And we want to remind you that this is not about shame. Avoidance is often a form of self-protection. It is our heart's way of saying that still hurts too much to touch. I don't
Yeah.
want to go there. But what we avoid often becomes the thing that shapes us the most. And healing does not mean forcing you to face everything all at once, right? It means having a safe process where you do not have to keep running away from something because it hurts.
Yeah.
And this can look like avoiding, like we said, rooms in the house or boxes or photos, songs, holidays. It can avoid you can avoid family conversations or places that are connected to the loss, changing the subject quickly, staying busy so you don't have to feel. It might look like feeling dread around anniversaries or special dates on the calendar. It might look like avoiding people who remind you of what happened.
Yeah. It's a big one.
And the question that we have for this one, is there something I'm avoiding because it still feels too painful to face?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good one to sit with. Yeah.
Yeah.
The sixth sign is using STIRBs. So if you're not familiar with that term, STIRBs stands for short-term energy relieving behaviors, which takes a long time to say, and that's why we say STIRBs instead. Um, but these are things that we use in order to get temporary relief from emotional pain. because again, we can only deal with so much unprocessed, unresolved emotional pain before something gives, right? Now, I want to point out that not every behavior is unhealthy in and of itself. For example, food is not bad. We need food to live. Work is not bad. There is a such thing as bills. Helping people is not bad. It's wonderful. Watching a show is not bad. The question is, am I using this to avoid feeling something that needs my attention? That's the key. So stirbs might very well give us temporary relief, but they do not heal our grief. It's like putting a blanket over a smoke alarm. It may muffle the sound, but it does not put out the fire, right? Still going on. And again, I think this can be such a compassionate idea to embrace, like almost like an aha moment, right? Because most of us have been judging ourselves for our coping behaviors instead of asking the far more important question of what pain am I trying to soothe here? That's really the question that we want to dig into. So, what it can look like is like we've noted food, alcohol, drugs, could be shopping. Sometimes people say retail therapy, doom scrolling endlessly, workaholism, helping everyone else, just showing up and just helping out. So we're not thinking about our own thing, just losing ourselves in entertainment, which could also be related to isolation. It could even be exercising excessively. It's just, or maybe it's just something as simple as just always needing some kind of noise or distraction around us so that we don't have time to be alone with our thoughts. So the question that we want to reflect on is, where do I seek comfort when I do not want to feel what I am feeling, right? That's what we want to kind of sit with and think about.
Yeah. And number 7 is feeling stuck in a version of yourself that you had to become in order to survive. This is a powerful one. In
Yeah.
fact, our last webinar that we did focused completely on this. So if you want to go deeper into that, I recommend to watch that one. It's so, so good. And really, this is one of the deeper and often more hidden signs of unresolved grief.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we're not only grieving someone who maybe has passed away, or a relationship that has ended, or the family that broke up, or even the dream that did not happen. Sometimes we're grieving who we had to become in order to survive those losses. So let's dig into that a little. Maybe you became the strong one, or the responsible one, or the invisible one, the fixer, the peacemaker, the one who never needs anything, or the one who keeps everyone else okay. And maybe that version of you helped you survive. And we can honor that, but we also want to be clear that survival is not the same as freedom. And if you think about all those parts that we become to survive, is very lonely. And we end
Yeah.
up feeling very um not loved, not something. There's something missing when we're in that mode, and we can't just be and allow ourselves to be loved. And part of our healing is to be able to say thank you to that part of you, of yourself. Thank you for helping me survive. You carried me through difficult seasons, and I'm so grateful. But I no longer want to spend the rest of my life merely protecting myself from pain. I want to live from wholeness rather than survival, and from freedom rather than fear.
Mm,
Love to hear if that resonates, if you feel that. That's a powerful, powerful part.
yeah.
So this can look like feeling like you lost yourself, being overly responsible, people pleasing, needing to be in control, being hyper independent, always performing, feeling like you always have to be on, that kind of thing. You have a difficult time resting. You're either out cold because you can't think, but it's hard to rest. And even
Yeah.
having rest in when you're working and going, excuse me, feeling guarded,
Mhm.
not even knowing what you want anymore. Have you ever had that happen? Someone asks you, "What do you want?" You're like, "I have no idea. I don't know." So living from protection instead of freedom.
Yeah.
These are powerful. And so the question that we came up with for this section is, who did I have to become to survive? And is that who I still want to be?
Yeah.
Very powerful question.
Yeah. Yeah, hopefully everybody takes a minute with these to, obviously this is, you're not going to be able to delve into these deep questions in this exact moment, but just take the time to jot them down and really commit that at some point down the road you will ask these questions and you will, kind of come to the answer for yourself. Um, because once people begin to recognize the signs of grief, the next question immediately becomes, so what do I do with this? Right? So what do I do with this? And before we talk about what helps, I think it's good to talk about what does not heal grief. We've alluded to this before. Time alone does not heal grief. Time passes. Healing requires action. Talking can be helpful, but talking in circles is not what's going to bring about emotional completion. It just won't. Understanding why something happened can bring some insight. But again, insight is not the same thing as emotional completion. Crying can be a release, and it's wonderful. Sometimes it's a very needed release, in fact. But tears alone do not complete what was left emotionally unfinished. Staying busy may help you function and get through the day, but it does not heal your heart. And so sometimes people try to rush forgiveness before they've really told the truth about what hurt them. And so, yes, forgiveness is part of our journey, but it cannot be used to silence our pain.
So good.
Healing then is not about pretending it didn't matter. It's not, it's really about completing whatever it was that your heart has been carrying up to this point. And remember, there are a lot of things. There are a lot of things that can give us comfort, at least temporarily, insight, some type of relief, but they do not heal our grief. They just don't.
So, of course, we're going to come over here to
Yeah,
what actually helps, right? Because we don't want to leave you there. We want to
right.
take you here. And so, we want to talk a little bit about becoming emotionally complete because that's what helps. And that does not mean forgetting. It does not mean approving of what happened. And it doesn't mean that this relationship, this loss, that it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It does not even mean that you'll never feel sadness again. Emotional completion means your heart is no longer bound to what was left unfinished.
Mm,
There's an untethering that happens, which is why you're able to be more present and why you're able to have more clarity. It's brilliant how it all works.
yeah.
And that's what we help people experience. We want to clearly identify the grief that you're carrying. And that means looking at the relationships in your life, looking at losses that you've had honestly, and discovering what is it in there that you need to and desire to express. Because sometimes we're not even aware of what that is.
Yeah.
It takes a bit to get really connected because our emotional truth about things can be buried. It can be buried very deep down, covered up by our survival, right?
Yeah.
So the goal is to remove the pain that has been attached to the memories, the relationship, or the loss so that you can get complete and live fully in the present.
Exactly. Exactly. And so the grief recovery method, it doesn't just teach people to, cope better. It really gives them the tools to get to the root of their pain. I mean, we can spend years trying to manage the symptoms of unresolved grief. The anxiety, the overthinking, the people pleasing, the anger, the numbness, the self-sabotage, the disconnection, basically all the things that we've been talking about up to this point. But
Mm.
grief recovery is what helps us to take an honest look at what's underneath those patterns and ask, what losses have I never fully grieved? What pain have I turned into self rejection? What family messages have shaped my habits? What coping mechanisms are protecting my unhealed pain? Where am I performing instead of living? And what would it mean to be loved without pretending? Our grief will often try to convince us that basically there's something wrong with me. But the truth is, something happened to me. Something hurt me. Something was lost. Something needs to be grieved or expressed or completed. And that realization changes everything, because when you apply the tools of grief recovery, we're able to identify our losses and give voice to whatever it is we never fully expressed. And that's what allows us to release the pain that we have been carrying. And when the grief underneath the pain heals, then our old patterns begin to soften. Our nervous system feels safer. Relationships shift. Communication becomes clear.
Yeah.
Boundaries become healthier because we're no longer living from the wound or the lie or the version of ourselves that we became in order to survive. Instead, we're living from a deeper place of truth, clarity, connection, and ultimately freedom. And the grief recovery method is the only evidence-based program designed to help you experience emotional completion with losses of every kind. And so if tonight has stirred something in you, then we invite you to take the next step with us.
Yes. And I love this. This is your sign. This is the sign. Our 8-week one-on-one coaching, it's designed to help you get to the root of unresolved grief in 8 weeks. It's amazing. And we meet once a week for an hour and a half, 90 minutes on Zoom. We walk with you step by step through the Grief Recovery Handbook, and we guide you through this proven process. It's totally proven. Hundreds, thousands actually of people have gone through this process. And this helps you identify the losses and the pain that you might still be carrying and understand how unresolved grief can shape our self-protection and our relationship patterns. So this is very deep and intentional work, and we are with you every step of the way through the entire process. And we always love having people on that have gone through grief recovery. We call them fondly alumni, because you're advanced. You've done this work and you know how it works. And we want to welcome you back and to remind you that continuing your work through alumni sessions is the very best way to reach even deeper healing and clarity as
Yeah,
you go through those. And this is the total value of what you get. So a 30-minute consultation call with either Dan or myself, that's free. The Grief Recovery Handbook is backed by more than 40 years of research. It's considered the gold standard in recovery from grief and loss. And the 8 weeks, right, of 90 minutes ongoing one-on-one coaching calls. And this is valued at $1,200. And we always love to give a special bonus for being on the webinar tonight.
exactly. So for anyone that's ready to take the next step right now, we're inviting you to book a free consultation with either Vicki or myself, and we will take $100 off the 8-week grief recovery program. So during our consultation call, we'll explore, how we can support you. We'll make sure that we answer all your questions. And then if you're ready, we will create a personalized roadmap for your healing journey. Also, I just want to throw in there, if you're an alumni, we also encourage you to book a consultation call because there's even more healing and growth waiting for you as you continue to work through your other relationships. And then one final note, if you are here at the invitation of a GR specialist, we encourage you to reach back out to them and they would be happy to walk you through the grief recovery method.
Yes, absolutely. So these 7 signs that we've been talking about tonight, they're like trail markers. They're showing you where your heart has been waiting for compassion, for truth, and ultimately for completion. So we want to invite you back into these places of your heart that might need healing. And you don't have to walk that path ever alone because the pain that we carry, it doesn't come from nowhere. It formed around losses that were never fully grieved because we didn't know how.
Yeah.
And they're formed around moments when we were hurt, unseen, rejected, abandoned, or left to make sense on our own of something that happened that shouldn't have ever happened, right? But the pain is not your identity. It is not who you are. And that's why we'd love to invite you just to reach out and book a call. The consultation call is totally free, and we would just love to hear more about your life, your experience, and how the grief recovery method could help you. So, like Dan said, if somebody invited you on this call that's a grief recovery specialist, reach out to them. They would love to talk with you about that. I put our links in the chat. And you will also get an email that will have the links, and you'll also have a replay of tonight's webinar because I know we put a lot out there. We threw a lot out there. It will be good to kind of go through and kind of really take it all in.
Yeah. Yeah, so before we close tonight, I just want to take a few minutes for any questions that you might have. And those questions could be about something we've shared this evening, maybe how the idea is connected to something inside of you, uh, maybe just about how the grief recovery process works, or something else entirely. But we're here for you. And like I said, I wasn't kidding. We enjoy answering questions. We love questions. So there is no such thing as a small or unimportant question. If it's on your heart, it matters. So if you feel better or if it's more comfortable for you to just drop the question in the chat, then we'll read the question aloud and answer it for the group. Otherwise, you can unmute yourself and throw the question out there. And we will stay on as long as necessary to make sure that every single question is completely answered. So that is our promise to you.
Yes. If there was anything that resonated, we would love to hear. And I really love this last quote that says, "The grief you have been carrying may not have looked like grief. It may have felt like you lost parts of yourself along the way."
Mm.
Because sometimes, and what we really wanted to really express is sometimes the things that we're experiencing and feeling is actually grief, even though it might not seem like it. We wanted to make that super clear.
Yeah.
Yes. Well,
Okay.
thank you guys so much for
Yeah.
being here
We appreciate your
with us.
time.
Yes. And it has been such an honor to walk through this conversation together. So if you would like to talk off screen here, please feel free to reach out. And please take care of yourself. Know that healing is always possible. And we definitely look forward to connecting with you again. So thank you so much. I'm
Yeah.
going to end the recording here. Thank you so much.